Despite only having 2 seasons, Gravity Falls has one of the most memorable and lovable casts of characters the world of cartoons has to offer. So today we're ranking every Gravity Falls character from worst to best. This is the Gravity Falls tier list. And we're kicking things off with the characters you'd do best to be Warb. This is the D tier for characters who have the less charming brand of weirdness. First up, we have a dual entry for dead last place, Pacifica's parents, Preston and Priscilla Northwest. Most of the time when a character is meant to be unlikable, we take that into account before we decide whether we love them or hate them, but sometimes the show does its job so well that you just can't help but place them anywhere but dead last.
Yes, I guess.
And considering that Pacifica's parents seem to have used some kind of Pavlovian mind games to turn their daughter into a zombified servant, they earned this spot far more than they did their excessive wealth. I don't know if I'd say that anyone deserves to have all the orifices in their face swapped, but if it had to happen to someone in this series, Preston would be my first choice. From 2 scummy rich folks to just 1, Mr. Bratzman is up next. As the owner, manager of several times, Bratzman is guilty of enslaving and cloning the band so he can make as much money as he can off them for as long as possible. As unlikable as this guy is, I have to admit, considering he's guilty of human trafficking, the fact that he got arrested for a missing license plate of all things is pretty hilarious. Doesn't redeem him in any way, shape, or form, but it was a funny gag. Next we have one of Mabel's many love interests, Gabe Benson. If he doesn't sound familiar, he's the puppet guy. You know, the guy whose entire life revolves around his sock puppets.
Oh hey, I'm Gabe, master of puppets.
There's nothing wrong with being passionate about your interests, of course. It's just, like, there is such a thing as being too passionate and too interested. I think we should reconsider allowing this guy to read to children, just saying. Local news reporter Sandra Jimenez is next, and I would not be bothering to include her if I weren't trying to check off all the noteworthy characters in the show. She's also the kind of person who's more than happy when a famous person dies because it'll classify as real news.
I'm just so happy.
If you've ever wondered who edits the Wikipedia pages of deceased celebrities the moment they pass on, I think the mystery may just be solved now. It's alright, Sandra. I can't blame you for being forgettable when you're overshadowed by the legendary Bodacious T. Let's talk about our first non-human characters, the Manotors. One of the many strange mystical creatures in the realm of Gravity Falls, the Manotors appear in the episode Dipper vs. Manliness, where they basically exhibit every negative stereotype of masculinity you've ever heard of.
He's a human. I don't like him. I don't like your face!
Denying basic human emotions, check. Pain and manliness being one and the same, double check. Trying to kill people who enjoy things they don't perceive as masculine, check. Wait, that one's new, actually. I mean, points for creativity, I guess.
I smell emotional issues.
Well, since we've mentioned one massive group of weird woodland creatures, I think the perfect character to close out the D tier would be the gnomes. While they do appear periodically throughout the series, these little guys played their biggest role in the very first episode in which they tried to kidnap Mabel and make her their queen. Gnome grooming allegations aside, it's kind of cool that they can turn into various giant forms by joining together, and even if they have nothing else in their favor, they do have Schmebulok, and who doesn't like Schmebulok?
Schmebulok.
Now let's move on to the C tier for the characters who at least have more good than bad, even if not by much. First up is another member of the intentionally unlikable category, but Robbie manages to be a lot more endearing than Pavlov Prescott back there. I mean, don't hear what I'm not saying. Is he a jerk? Yes, definitely and absolutely. But his being a jerk makes it refreshing for the show to routinely dunk on him basically every time he's on screen.
I like things that are dumb. I'm Robbie.
Frankly, my biggest complaint about Robbie is that the series does so little with him. Like, he becomes a little more tolerable near the end of the series, but that's mostly credited to him being drugged into falling in love with the girl. There are definitely better redemption arc-esque stories in the show, so we're gonna have to keep him pretty low, but sometimes a show needs a jerk, and Robbie fills that role, if nothing else. Following Robbie are Wendy's other friends, Thompson, Tambry, Lee, and Nate. Yeah, they might be more likable than Robbie, but which is worse, contributing only negative stuff to the series, or contributing basically nothing? It's debatable, but these guys' characters really do begin and end as Wendy's friends. They each have one personality trait, plus the collective personality trait of dunking on Thompson constantly. Not really too much to say about them, really. Okay, I kind of like Thompson. Thompson seems nice. Next up, we have Mayor Befuddlefumpter, dearly departed former mayor of Gravity Falls.
It's okay, they're with me.
Okay, I know this isn't fair, but we just have to mention that the main reason why he isn't any higher is the allegations against him possibly having started World War I. It may be unlikely that what would have been a 5-year-ish old boy could have assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, but we can't fully count it out. Still, other than that, he seems like a gem. Gotta respect a guy who's still putting effort in at the ripe old age of 102. I hope you've been following the rules of your local swimming pool, because Mr. Pool Check is next. The Deep End is a great episode, and this absolute legend is amazing major part of the reason why. Like, what went on throughout this dude's life to make him so darn passionate about upholding the rules of this swimming pool?
Mr. Pool Check, are you crying?
I have literally no idea, but something about it is just inexplicably funny, which really describes a lot of the side characters in this show. Feast your eye on Lazy Susan, our next character.
Your eye is weird. Let's talk about that.
It's a shame that her date with Stan earlier in the series never really went anywhere. She seems like one of those genuinely nice, at least adjacent to sane people who helps make the town seem a little less overwhelming. While she's not one of the funnier side characters, she is likable, but let's move on to someone with more surface level likability. Alright, old top. Up next we got good old Bud Gleeful. I cannot unhear the Buck Strickland in this man's voice.
Precious memories.
Fun design and vocal performance aside, Bud is one of those villain parents who does a good job of showing why his son is the way he is. Whereas Gideon is a psychotic child diva, Bud is a con man who spoils his son and exploits him for money. He does a good job of giving an indirect Gideon origin story while still remaining at least kind of endearing compared to him. That said, what the hell did you do to your poor wife, man?
Just keep backing in. Just keep backing in.
Speaking of family members of main characters, Seuss's abuelita is next. She's one of those usually innocent characters who catches you off guard here and there. For every scene where she's being a doting, supportive grandmother to Seuss, there's another where she reveals that she reads his diary when he's away, or straight up follows him during his romantic pursuits. Even at her worst, she's definitely endearing, but like, she really shouldn't be reading her adult son's diary.
Seuss's life is my soap opera.
But when it comes to seeing things you shouldn't be seeing, Blind Ivan is the first one who comes to mind. Honestly, the only reason this guy isn't even higher is the simple fact that he wasn't introduced earlier.
And if you had, you wouldn't remember.
This show revolves around supernatural mysteries, so the fact that the guy whose whole purpose is to erase the people's memories of said mysteries only appears a whopping one time is a downright shame. Really cool concept, it just sucks that it barely got used, but he did indirectly lead to Old Man McGucket getting some plot relevance, so we'll give him credit for that. Another underused character is Time Baby, a futuristic overlord who just so happens to be a baby.
That is one big baby.
There's not too much to say about him, especially since he was killed by Bill Cipher with such ease that even Bill was shocked, but one question about him exceeds all others. Is this one of the babies President Quentin Tremblay put on the Supreme Court?
Appointed 6 babies to the Supreme Court.
It's gotta be, right?
This is a dark day for America.
A quick mention of the love god is in order. Honestly, I love this take on a Cupid portrayal. Yeah, being a cutesy fairy or baby with wings is fun, but somehow the mascot of Valentine's Day being a stoned, half-naked rock star feels absolutely perfect, and who could fill that role better than John DiMaggio? It's a shame that he isn't in a better episode, or at least more than one episode.
I am not loving this.
We have one more C-tier character coming through, and that character is Multibear. He's a 6-headed bear who enjoys Icelandic pop sensation Baba, to the point where when he thought he was about to die, his only wish was to hear Disco Girl one more time. You really can tell a lot about someone by their music taste, huh? Good for him. Even on death's door, he wasn't willing to give up his love for girly pop music. Respect. We've talked about some fun characters.
Did I miss something?
But the B tier is where things are really going to start ramping up. First in this category, we have Stan's wax figures from the series' 3rd episode. The main reason why I wanted to mention these guys is the fact that this episode just feels like the epitome of Gravity Falls' first season. All of the weird trails the kids follow turn up blank when they investigate Wax Stan's brutal murder, until in a twist of sheer absurdity, it's revealed that the multitude of wax statues Stan had kept in his attic for years were the perpetrators. You know, I don't care what Stan says, buying multiple sentient life forms for only $20 is a total steal. Next, we have a true beacon of masculinity, Manly Dan Corduroy. We're finally starting to get into some of the most memorable side characters. Manly Dan is just one of many, but you can bet that when he's on screen, the cheers of family and friends are sure to follow. Whether he's brutalizing a fish he's already caught or ramming into a government vehicle to defend a boy band's honor, Dan is easily one of the funnier and more unpredictable gag characters in the series. I really wish they'd allowed him to interact with Dipper more. Can you imagine Dipper finding out this absolute beast is his crush's dad? But hey, at least Dipper got to interact with Dippy Fresh, you know, Mabel's own idealized version of Dipper. As much as Mabel is doing Dipper dirty here by implying that he isn't supportive, I'll allow it just this once because Dippy Fresh is such an epic dude that it makes up for any moral implications his existence imply for Mabel. Also, fun fact, apparently Dipper was gonna snap his neck in a deleted scene. I wonder if this show was really intended to be for kids. Several Times is up next. A boy band with enough talent to woo everyone from preteen girls to burly lumberjacks. These guys are an example of just how simultaneously hilarious and horrifying this show can be. On one hand, it's funny how these guys know basically nothing about the outside world due to their boss being a depraved, greedy sociopath. On the other hand, well, they are perpetually being cloned and deprived of basic human rights to make their boss money. I guess you could say they were cloned several times. Mabel may have had to let several times go, but Zyler and Kraz are in the safest place she knows, her imagination. Or at least, I think they are. At the end of Weirdmageddon 2, they come to the reality-altering realization that they actually do exist outside of Mabel's mind. Maybe that's the greatest mystery in the series, after all. The mystery of existence, or the lack thereof.
This whole place is a giant mind.
Alright, enough thought-provoking stuff for now. Let's give the USA guy a quick shout-out. Like, come on, get you a man who loves you like USA guy loves his country.
USA!
You know, for my fellow American viewers, I feel like we all know someone who looks almost exactly like this, right? And I know we all know someone who looks like the free pizza guy. All he wants is some free pizza. Like, he even has a free pizza shirt. You gotta wonder how many people thought he was giving the free pizza away because of that, right? No? You aren't wondering that at all? Huh? Okay, alright. There's nothing strange about loving pizza or your country, just like there's nothing strange about Tad Strange. He's a simple man, really.
Loving you, Tad.
He loves bread, he's forever scarred by the horrors he's experienced, and oh, no, that's pretty much it. Well, you know what? He's an honest, friendly guy, and that's worth a lot in a town like Gravity Falls. Geez, guys, we gotta talk about Blendin Blandin now.
Blendin, Blenjamin, Blendin!
Iconic voice aside, Blendin is one of the better one-off antagonists in the series. We see plenty of characters with dangerous powers and resources throughout the series, so it's nice to see a guy like Blendin here and there. A guy so dense that he lets his life's ambition get wrecked by a couple of 12-year-olds messing with him. He doesn't seem entirely evil, but he's just sketchy enough to where you never feel too bad for him.
You shut your time mouth!
Next up, we have Dipper's nearest and dearest friend, Tyrone. Tyrone, we hardly knew him. One of the great things about this series is how it takes common tropes and flips them on their head. When Dipper clones himself to take over his work during the Mystery Shack's big party, it'd be reasonable for you to assume that there'd be some real versus clone shenanigans, but as it turns out, Tyrone isn't just some psycho who wants to take over Dipper's life. He's just, well, he's Dipper with a weakness to water. Using him to point out Dipper's own flaw of overthinking everything was both a really nice storytelling choice and a weirdly relatable fault to point out. But when it comes to Dipper's clones, you can't beat Paper Jam Dipper. What a tragic character. A truly terrible experience. Sorry, that was insensitive. I genuinely feel bad for him. For our last couple of B-tier characters, we have love interests like Melody, Seuss's long-distance turned medium-distance girlfriend. It's a shame that she's barely used outside of her debut episode because her dynamic with Seuss was sweet. She matches his childlike energy but still manages to handle her responsibilities in a mostly mature way. It's always nice to see kind-hearted characters make meaningful connections, so good on Melody for providing us with that vicarious satisfaction. Rounding out the B-tier is perhaps Mabel's only decent love interest, Mermando. On top of the absolutely hilarious fact that this dude's parents named him after his own species,
Mermando.
Mermando seems like a pretty chill guy. Considering most of Mabel's summer crushes were either psychopaths, creeps, or both, Mermando's sympathetic quest to get back to the ocean was a breath of fresh air, or water. Honestly, it would have been fun to see him again, or at least his wedding. Now we're moving into the most memorable characters in the ensemble cast. This is the A tier. I do honestly wish I could place Wendy higher, but I sadly have to agree with the majority of fans when I say that she's easily the most underdeveloped of the main cast. Every other major character gets at least one episode devoted to them specifically, but Wendy is only ever in the spotlight when it's a means of supplementing Dipper and Mabel's adventures. That doesn't mean I don't like her though. Wendy is nice, she genuinely cares about the people around her, and she's honestly pretty badass when the show lets her shine, especially during Weirdmageddon. If we do get that revival everyone's speculating about, I hope she gets a little more screen time. That does not involve someone else simping on her, please, for the love of God. Sir Quentin Tremblay III is putting up his dukes next. This man is a true icon. Only Gravity Falls could do something as absurd as inventing an 8.5 president and have it accepted fully as canon. Tremblay is a genuinely funny character for just how absurdly silly he is throughout his admittedly small amount of screen time. Not to mention, he's a great means of pointing out how invaluable Mabel's silliness can be. It's a shame he never comes back, nor does the president's key he gives to Dipper. Like, come on, that would have really been useful.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
How about we get to some villains? Next up is the Summerween Trickster, who is living, formerly proof that Halloween is less of a time and more a way of life.
Traumatized.
Having a villain made of the rejected kinds of Halloween candy is a really fun concept, as is the fact that he's so bitter about not being eaten. Also, for anyone who's interested, the Trickster cries tears made of candy corn, meaning he's on the candy corn sucks side of the debate. Now respectfully argue amongst yourselves in the comments. Seriously, it helps the algorithm or something. Up next is Giffen, the dating app who went full-on yandere on poor Seuss. Really, Giffany is this high up primarily because she's just a great parody of weirdly in-depth dating sims, as well as indie games in general. I mean, fans often joke around about how this this episode inadvertently predicted both Five Nights at Freddy's and Doki Doki Literature Club. Given how fun the parody is and how great the episode is, Giffany is a character who earns a lot of points right off the bat. But while this may be a hot take, Rumble McSkirmish is still the king of Gravity Falls gaming parodies. First of all, incredible name. Second of all, the parody of everything from fighting games to classic arcade games, even side-scrolling beat-em-ups, they're all on point.
No, I have no looking up.
And Rumble does a great job of bringing stuff into that classic Gravity Falls branded weirdness. Not to mention that if someone ever kills your loved ones, you can count on Rumble to avenge you. Just do not lie to him about it. On the topic of vengeance, the Northwest Mansion Ghost is up next. Like Giffany, much of his being placed this high up is due to him being from one of the series' best episodes. The whole origin story of him being an exploited lower-class worker makes you sympathize with him, but the whole paralyzing multitudes of people, including children thing, keeps him firmly in the villain category. He also led to Pacifica getting some decent redemption too, so points for that. Speaking of, as divisive as this will probably be, Pacifica Northwest has earned a pretty high spot on our list. I have to admit, it's commendable for a series to be able to take a character as utterly unlikable as Pacifica and make her genuinely sympathetic. As the show gives us more screen time from her, we see that the reason she is the way she is lies in her absolutely horrendous family. And at the end of the Northwest Mansion mystery episode, she opens the doors of her mansion to the common folk. She's at least started to break free from her parents' control, and hopefully she'll keep that sense of common decency that her family has long been lacking. But while Pacifica certainly has the potential to be a friend, Candy and Grenda are already there. Like Wendy's friends, they really begin and end their character arcs as Mabel's friends. Now, some might consider it unfair to put one friend group much lower, but come on, Candy and Grenda have more personality than that bunch ever could. Like, how many of you even knew Nate and Lee had names before watching this? On the contrary, Candy and Grenda are absolute icons, from Grenda being a giant with the occasional shred of gentleness, to Candy being an awkward sweetheart who is definitely harboring some level of resentment towards the world.
I'm prepared to defend myself.
They even act as Mabel's voices of reason sometimes, like trying to get her to let several times go free. But if there's anyone in town who's more reliable, it has to be Big Henry.
Oh, Big Henry's Big Henry.
I will take it.
That's right, we wouldn't dream of forgetting about Big Henry, the Lilliputian who gave his life to get the ball through his tribe's hole at the putt-putt course. Complete with a dramatic death and epic self-sacrifice, this guy is the epitome of what makes a true hero. And while it sucks that he died so soon after his introduction, we can forgive it since he would have soloed Bill in one hit if he'd made it to the finale. Jokes aside, I think we all know who the most powerful creature in Gravity Falls is. To be determined, aka Bodacious T.
No one will ever call you that.
Oh. This guy is this guy's a legend. His indescribable yet fun vocal performance, his unpredictable behavior, and his genuinely unjustified sense of self-confidence. Bodacious T is genuinely hilarious, and I don't think there's a single time he appears on screen without at least making me crack a smile.
Oh, an air freshener. Finally, I'll smell like a person. Steely, steely.
That's the essence of what makes a truly great side character. Closing out the A tier, we have the man who both opened and closed a rift between dimensions, Ford Pines. While he's introduced way later into the series than other major characters, Ford is a classic example of quality over quantity. His first few episodes were some of the best in the entire series, and his introduction led to an endearing dynamic with Dipper, and naturally some serious conflict with Stan. That said, the fact that he ghosted Stan for years over an accident is pretty scummy, which keeps him from the S tier, but still, he's a great character who's earned a lot of respect from us for his ultimate redemption. But not quite enough to be among the absolute best of the best. This is, at last, the S tier. Let's get him going, starting with Tyler Cutebiker. Tyler is one of those supporting characters you just can't help but love. He's like Bruce from Family Guy, just always there to brighten the mood a little bit, no matter how bleak things seem.
Get him! Get him!
Whether he's standing up to Bill Cipher as mayor of the town or cheering on kids fighting at the Several Times concert, Tyler is a never-ending source of enthusiasm for the townspeople.
Local enthusiasm enthusiast, Tyler Cutebiker.
And I hope his term as mayor is still going successfully to this day. But if you ask me, he's got it. Got it. Next, we have a less friendly cute character, Lil Gideon. Acting as the main antagonist of Season 1, Gideon is a cross between a spoiled rich kid, a bit of a neckbeard, and a complete and utter psychopath. And I love him for it. While he has plenty of genuinely threatening moments from his debut appearance to the multiple episodes where he attempts to destroy the Pines family, there are other episodes where he's just being a little nuisance in general. Like, take the pool episode, for instance. He spends the entire episode taking up the specific seat Stan wants just to mess with him. Gotta respect such sweet, petty dedication like that.
So
tired of being cute.
On top of being a funny bad guy, Gideon also proves by the end of the series that he isn't all bad. He even has a bit of redemption by turning against Bill and helping the gang defeat him in the grand finale. It's a good thing Gideon decided to follow the law, because Sheriff Blubbs and Deputy Durland will definitely be keeping an eye on him.
If you break the rules, we're gonna zap you.
Zap, zap!
These two are absolute gems. While police in cartoons often tend to be incompetent, cruel, or both, Blubbs and Durland manage to be just a little incompetent, but make up for it by being both well-meaning and endearing.
You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and breaking our hearts.
The way these guys look and talk to each other is so genuinely sweet. Even if it wasn't all but confirmed that they're a couple, this would be a sincerely sweet dynamic. There's also the fact that Blubbs is voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, who really seems to have a type when it comes to voice acting.
I've got no choice. Our orders come from the very top.
And I mean that as a compliment. Here's hoping Durland eventually got his pink balloon. Even if he didn't, don't worry, we've got something pink in the next spot. Waddles. Just look at him. Come on. You didn't think he'd be anywhere below the top 5, did you? I don't know what it is about cartoon pigs being so needlessly adorable, but I'm definitely not complaining. Waddles waddled, so Fat Nuggets could, Nugget, that, you know what I mean, alright? He's a good pig, and I'd trust him with my life, personally. Okay, now, it feels morally wrong to place these two outside of the top 3, but landing just outside of the podium are Dipper and Mabel Pines, aka the Mystery Twins, copyright Seuss 2012. It might be a bit controversial to rank them both together, but as much as the internet seems to have a thing against Mabel, I think these two are both great. They're lovable characters in their own rights, so let's talk about them, shall we? Starting with Dipper, the main character himself. He really doesn't need much introduction. Well, he obviously is the more mature of the twins, from his obsession with solving mysteries to his willingness to sacrifice for the good of his sister and other loved ones. Dipper is also still very much a flawed kid. He prioritizes his crush on Wendy, uses the town's weirdness to his advantage, and is all around a stressed out mess of a kid. But that just makes him more likable. Dipper isn't perfect.
I'm fine! Everything's fine!
But he makes up for this by being supportive, hardworking, and dedicated. Now, what if I told you that all 3 of those traits apply to Mabel as well? But first, this video is brought to you by WickedBinge channel memberships. You can gain access to our videos early before anyone else, plus gain access to members-only emojis and loyalty badges by supporting the channel through a membership. Yeah, Mabel gets some grief for admittedly valid reasons. She can be extremely selfish, allowing Dipper to make constant sacrifices for her and rarely returning the favor. But all that aside, Mabel is arguably the most thoughtful and sweet character in the show. She takes pleasure in making the people around her happy, from trying to matchmake for Robbie to making sweaters for everyone during Weirdmageddon.
Thanks for these apocalypse sweaters, Mabel. The end of the world has never been so comfortable.
She's also genuinely hilarious, even when she is being reckless and selfish.
Last night an owl tried to eat my tongue.
That's great!
And like, guys, she's 12. Kids tend to be selfish. In fact, you were also a kid at one point. Crazy stuff, I know, but sarcasm aside, while I get the reason behind people disliking Mabel, it's by no means a train we've hopped on here at Wicked Binge. The Mystery Twins are both legends, only kept outside of the top 3 because the remaining characters are just that good. With 3 sides and 1 eye and a whole lot of crimes against humanity, Bill Cipher takes home the bronze medal of greatness. This little triangle dude is an absolute icon. Chaotic villains are in short supply nowadays, but Bill manages to deliver that brand of evil in spades. There's no deep, dark backstory here, nor is there any good intentioned motive or anything. Bill literally just likes to mess things up for no reason, but the sheer pleasure of it. He's the personification of hedonism and triangularity, doing everything he does for fun and games. That iconic voice and design just make him even better. Like, he's such a genuinely threatening creature, but he looks like he could easily be drawn by a 3rd grader. I love that, but there are still 2 characters I love even more.
You're making a mistake! I'll give you anything!
Now, some dudes would say Seuss shouldn't be this high up, but hear me out. Seuss is one of the kindest and funniest characters in Gravity Falls.
The question mark. This one's unsolvable.
In fact, I wouldn't fault anyone for saying he's on the farthest end of both of those categories.
Okay, what's closest to our present situation?
Seuss is just a chill, thoughtful guy who doesn't have a bad bone in his body. Despite being the clumsy one, Seuss is still a genuinely helpful guy.
If anyone asks, I'm not Seuss.
Whether he's acting as a protective older brother figure to Mabel and Dipper, or using his handyman skills to help on their adventures.
When the universe is broken, only one handyman can fix it.
Seuss is the definition of a gentle giant. He's funny and sensitive, but that never gets in the way of him being genuinely useful, which earns him a lot of points in my book. If we're talking about sheer likability, Seuss takes home the gold any day, but when it comes to taking the entire character into account, by process of elimination, the golden medal of greatness goes to none other than Grunkle Stan. And I'm sure he'll be more than happy to get something golden.
Right, like I'm gonna fall for that.
The reason I rank Stan as the best character in Gravity Falls is the simple fact that he illustrates every great aspect of the show.
Please, ladies, Control yourselves.
Gravity Falls and its cast are based on 3 major traits: mystery, comedy, and heart. From episode 1, Stan has exhibited all of these perfectly, from mysteriously entering that vending machine door at the end of the episode to constantly being the butt of jokes about just how much of a sketchy con man he is.
$20? I'll just take them when you're not looking.
What?
I said I was gonna rob you.
But while on the surface this is Stan's greatest flaw, it's also what makes him our top pick. When it's eventually revealed that Stan's whole con man persona was a result of his efforts to save his brother from being trapped in another dimension, everything he's done throughout the series is completely recontextualized. Every lie he told the kids wasn't to be secretive, but to keep them safe. Every con he pulled was an effort to save his brother from a mess he wrongly considered himself responsible for. And in the end, he was willing to give up his very being to save his family and the entire world from Bill.
You're our hero, Stanley.
If you can overcome all that hardship and still come across as the funniest character in the show, you're a shoo-in for our top pick, hands down.